cold, hard look and be like he used to be 8 months ago, before Mom and Dad were killed. Since I was dreaming, I brought Mom and Dad back to life. Mom could bake some more chocolate cakes, and Dad would drive the pickup out early to feed the cattle. He would slap Derry on the back and tell him he was getting to be a man, a regular chip off the block, and they would be as close as they used to be. Maybe Johnny could come and live with us, and the gang could come out on weekends. And maybe Dallas would see that there was some good in the world after all, and Mom would talk to him and make him grin in spite of himself. "You got quite a mom," Dally used to say. "She knows the score." She could talk to Dallas and kept him from getting into a lot of trouble. My mother was golden and beautiful. "Pony boy!" Johnny was shaking me. "Hey, Pony, wake up!"
All right, the top of 49.
Shivering. The stars had moved. "Glory, what time is it?" "I don't know. I went to sleep too, listening to you rattle on and on. You'd better get home. I think I'll stay all night out here." Johnny's parents didn't care if he came home or not. "Okay," I yawned. Gosh, but it was cold. "If you get cold or something, come on over to our house." "Okay." I ran home, trembling at the thought of facing Derry. The porch light was on. Maybe they were asleep and I could sneak in, I thought. I peeked in the window. Soda Pop was stretched out on the sofa, sound asleep, but Derry was in the armchair under the lamp reading the newspaper. I gulped and opened the door softly. Derry looked up from his paper. He was on his feet in a second. I stood there chewing on my fingernail. "Where the heck have you been? Do you know what time it is?" He was madder than I'd seen him in a long time. I shook my head wordlessly. "Well, it's 2 a.m, kiddo. Another hour and I would have had the police out after you. Where were you, Pony boy?" His voice was rising. "Where in the almighty universe were you?" It sounded dumb even to me when I stammered, I went to sleep in the lot." "You what?" He was shouting, and Soda Pop sat up and rubbed his eyes. "Hey, Pony boy," he said sleepily. "Where you been?" "I didn't mean to," I pleaded with Derry. "I was talking to Johnny, and we both dropped off." "I reckon it never occurred to you that your brothers might be worrying their heads off and afraid to call the police because something like that could get you two thrown in a boy-some so quick it'd make your head spin. And you were asleep in the lot. Pony boy, what on earth is the matter with you? Can't you use your head? You haven't even got a coat on." I felt hot tears of anger and frustration rising. "I said that I didn't mean to." "I didn't mean to," Derry shouted, and I almost shook. "I didn't think. I forgot. That's all I hear out of you. Can't you think of anything?" "Derry," Soda Pop began, but Derry turned on him. "You keep your trap shut. I'm sick and tired of hearing you stick up for him." He should never yell at Soda. Nobody should ever holler at my brother. I exploded. "Don't you yell at him," I shouted. Derry wheeled around and slapped me so hard that it knocked me against the door. Suddenly it was deathly quiet. We had all frozen. Nobody in my family had ever hit me. Nobody. Soda was wide-eyed. Derry looked at the palm of his hand where it had turned red, and then he looked back at me. His eyes were huge. "Pony boy." I turned and ran out the door and down the street as fast as I could. Derry screamed, "Pony, I didn't mean to..." But I was at the lot by then and pretended I couldn't hear. I was running away. It was plain to me that Derry didn't want me around, and I wouldn't stay if he did. He wasn't ever going to hit me again. "Johnny," I called, and started when he rolled over and jumped up almost under my feet. "Come on, Johnny. We're running away."
Top of 51.
Johnny asked no questions. We ran for several blocks until we were out of breath. Then we walked. I was crying by then. I finally just sat down on the curb and cried, burying my face in my arms. Johnny sat down beside me, one hand on my shoulder. "Easy, Pony boy," he said softly. "We'll be okay." I finally calmed down and wiped my eyes on my bare arm. My breath was coming in quivering sobs. "Got a cigarette?" He handed me one and struck a match. "Johnny, I'm scared." "Well, don't be. You're scaring me." What happened? I've never seen you bawl like that. I don't very often. It was Derry. He hit me. I don't know what happened, but I couldn't take him hollering at me and hitting me too. I don't know. Sometimes we get along okay, then all of a sudden he blows up on me, or else is nagging at me all the time. He didn't used to be like that. We used to get along okay before Mom and Dad died. Now he just can't stand me. I think I like it better when the old man's hitting me, Johnny sighed. At least then I know he knows who I am.
That's sad.
I walk in that house and nobody says anything. I walk out and nobody says anything. I stay away all night and nobody notices. At least you got soda. I ain't got nobody. Shoot, I said, startled out of my misery. You got the whole gang. Dally didn't slug you tonight 'cause you're the pet. I mean, golly, Johnny, you got the whole gang. It ain't the same as having your own folks care about you, Johnny said simply. It just ain't the same. I was beginning to relax and wonder if running away was such a great idea. I was sleepy and freezing to death, and I wanted to be home in bed, safe and warm under the covers, with Soda's arm across me. I decided I would go home and just not speak to Derry. It was my house as much as Derry's, and if he wanted to pretend I wasn't alive, that was just fine with me. He couldn't stop me from living in my own house. Let's walk to the park and back. Then maybe I'll be cooled off enough to go home. Okay, Johnny said easily. Okay. Things gotta get better, I figured. They couldn't get worse. I was wrong.
Okay, y'all, that last... Okay, so, making inferences. Here's our test. There are pencils up here, too. Just FYI. Remember, when you make an inference, hurry up and get your this right now. When you make an inference, you're kind of like drawing a conclusion based on what you've read. So, Cherry tells Pony, that's probably why we take turns getting our names in the paper on page 38. Okay? So, it's asking us what would be some reasons the greasers get their names in the paper. What would be some of the things? What's one thing, Sky?
Destruction of property.
Yes, vandalism. What else? Who's got one? Stealing. What else? Fighting. What do they call their fights, y'all? Do you remember? Rumbles. What is it? I'm going to put rumbles just so y'all remember. What is it that Dally does to Tim Shepard's vehicle? No, he slashed his tires.
I wasn't here with him.
I know.
That was close.
Okay, so think about the socias. What might be some reasons their names? Because Cherry says we're all in the paper sometimes. What are some of the things they might be? Could they also be in the paper for the fighting and the rumbles? That's a similarity.
That could be in there for a reward.
Yeah, sometimes they're in there for positive things. You're right. But there's some other negative things that are a little bit different from the greasers. So let's think, what is it that those socials like to do a lot?
Drink.
Yes, and they have drinking parties. They could get in trouble for drinking and driving. So their issues are a little bit different as far as that goes. Yeah. They could get speeding violations. I'm going to put drinking and driving. So, neither one of these groups are always doing the right thing, okay? The difference is usually, not always, but usually the greasers are defending themselves in these fights. They're not really going and looking for them. The socias, they drive around looking for somebody to jump. Now, Dowie, he's a different story. He went and slashed Tim Shepard's tires, so then they are going to fight because he should have done that. But for the most part, the socias are the ones looking for some type of fight. Not always fair fight either. Okay? So, when it comes to important quotes, remember we talked the other day about citing textual evidence, which simply means pointing it out. Well, there are some important quotes about Mickey Mouse. Who is what now? Who was Mickey Mouse? Soda's horse. So I want y'all to turn to where he talks about that. On page, we were just there.
38, 39.
I'm seeing it on 48 and 49. Is that what you just said?
I said 38, 39. It's on a lot of things. 38, 39. It's on a lot of pages.
Okay. Go to 48 and 49 first. Y'all turn to page 48 and 49. Actually, you might be right. Sky, it might be better there. Hold on.
This is talking about his mom and dad.
Yes, sorry. I'm sorry. Sky's right. 38 and 39 would be better. Actually, 39 is where I want you to focus. At the bottom of 39, talking about the horse, he said, in the middle, like right here. Y'all see that? Go kind of almost down. It's like from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines up from the bottom. That horse loved Soda. He'd stand there and chew on Soda's sleeve or collar. Gosh, but Soda Pop was crazy about that horse. He went down to see him every day. Mickey Mouse was a mean horse. He kicked other horses and was always getting into trouble. I've got me an ornery pony, Soda'd tell him, rubbing his neck. How come you're so mean, Mickey Mouse? Mickey Mouse would just chew on his sleeve and sometimes nip him, but not hard. He may have belonged to another guy, but he was Soda's horse. Does Soda still have him? Cherry asked. He got sold, I said. They came and got him one day and took him off. He was a real valuable horse, pure quarter. That means quarter horse. She didn't say anything else, and I was glad. I couldn't tell her that Soda had bawled all night long after they came and got Mickey Mouse. I cried too, if you want to know the truth, because Soda never really wanted anything except a horse, and he'd lost his. Soda had been 12 then, going on 13. He never let on to Mom and Dad how he felt, though, because we never had enough money, and usually we had a hard time making ends meet. You're 13 in our neighborhood, you know the score. I kept saving my money for a year, thinking that someday I could buy Mickey Mouse back for Soda. You're not real smart at 10. So it's asking you to decide an important quote that has to do with Mickey Mouse. What in there do y'all think stands out as something important about this horse that would make it an important part of this? Okay. To, who's he mean to? And who's the one person he wasn't mean to? So it's like Soda and his horse have this connection. Okay? What else might be important? An important quote that has...
It said he may have belonged to another guy, but he was Soda's horse.
Okay? He might have belonged to somebody else, but he was Soda's horse. Okay? Anything else? Yes. Shh.
Best friend.
But I need a quote. I need a piece of textual evidence.
There's
Okay.
my horse.
Huh?
It says in the thing, it says, the first day Soda saw him, he said, there's my horse.
Okay. And what are all these things showing us about Soda? Yes, he loved that horse, and he automatically had a connection with it. So then when he gets sold, what happens? It hurts him really bad, because just like everything else happens to the greasers, seems like things are constantly being taken away from them. Something that stands out to me is when Ponyboy says, I kept saving my money for a year thinking that someday I could buy Mickey Mouse back for Soda. What's that kind of showing us too? It is, and that he has this connection with his brother. You know, he loves his brother. I think what we'll put as our important quote Soda never really wanted anything except a horse, and he'd lost his. Chris, you need to do this as we're doing it, so you're not having to take Corey's paper. Now, when I'm citing a quote, I put my quote marks at the end, and then in parentheses, I put the author's last name, which is Hinton, and I put the page number, which is 40. Then I put my period. Okay? He'd lost his, H-E'-D, which stands for he had. So, here's our quote. Soda never really wanted anything except a horse, and he lost his. End quotes, and then you put the author's last name and the page number in parentheses. So yours should look just like mine. That's called citing my textual evidence, which means I'm showing you where I got this quote. That's what citing means. Okay? Here it is. Now, why is this important? What did I say? Why was it important when he pointed out all Soda ever wanted was a horse and he'd lost it? Why would that be important? That's right. I know, I'll fix it in just a second. The quote is another example of how the greasers lose the things they love. Like if you think about it, the three brothers lost their parents. Okay? Soda loses his horse. Johnny has lost any relationship he had with his parents. Dally lost his innocence. You know, he was started off going to jail when he was 10. They just seemed to not catch any breaks. Okay? I'm trying to find our sunset quotes. Here we go. Do y'all remember where our sunset quotes are? Where he and Cherry talk about the sunsets. Was it in this chapter?
41.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's kind of like a little at the bottom.
Yes, very good. At the bottom of 40, top of 41, he and Cherry have been talking about sunsets. He says at the very bottom of 40, I shook my head. It seemed funny to me that the sunset she saw from her patio and the one I saw from the back steps were the same one. Maybe the two different worlds we lived in weren't so different. We saw the same sunset. Which part of that do y'all think we should put as our important quotation? We don't need to write all of it.
They saw the same
Maybe the
sunset.
two different worlds we lived in weren't so different. We saw the same sunset.
Okay, very good. I think that's good because that kind of is part of the theme. Remember, we got to use our quotation marks because it's coming straight out of the book. I'm going to end my quotes, and then I'm going to put Hinton and what with it? 41. Good. Well, it's 40 and, no, we just got ours from 41, yeah. And then the period at the end. Now, can somebody decide sky? Chris, I need you to tell me, in your mind, when you look at that, Cherry and Ponyboy were talking about this sunset that they watch. Maybe the two different worlds we lived in weren't so different. We saw the same sunset. Why do you think that's important? When you think about Cherry, okay, the Soch, and then you think about Ponyboy, the greaser, and he's like, she's sitting out on her nice patio watching the sunset. Here I am on my back steps watching the sunset, and it's the same one, so maybe our worlds aren't so different. Why do you think that's important? What do you think that's showing us when you think about these two groups of people?
He's like, just because they're different.
You're on. I want you to do it. You're on the right track.
I don't know, like, he's like, trying to be on the different, I don't know how to see it.
Like a different level or a different social group.
Like, so, yeah, social group different.
Okay. Corey, you want to add to it? So they're kind of they're both realizing, or actually Ponyboy's really realizing that just because she's from a completely different group, they still, deep down, everybody's the same. And that's one of the things of this book. You're not supposed to be judging people based on their money, their clothes, their cars, that kind of thing, because people are still going to have some of the same things going on no matter where you come from. Okay? And that's what you're supposed to be seeing from this. Yeah, the Socs had money, they had the cars, all that, and later on you'll see they also had some family issues like these greasers did. It was just handled in a different way. Okay? I'm going to say backgrounds. You know, he's younger, so she kind of knows this. She can kind of see how the greasers and socias have some similarities. He's just realizing it, because all he's ever known is, that's a soc, you should hate that soc because they're all terrible. And he's realizing through Cherry, okay, well maybe they're not all so bad. You know, we're not different in a lot of ways, but we got some similarities. Before we leave, we're going to do this last little box. So all we got to do is pick out the character trait, okay? All right. Name a character trait 2-Bit demonstrates when he says to the socias, who you calling bums? Is, what do you think? When he looks at him and says, oh, y'all gonna call us bums? What would you call that trait? Would you say brave? Would you say daring? Would you say daring? Because he's kind of like almost saying, what you gonna do about it? You know?
That's pretty.
Just a minute. All right. When Ponyboy tells Cherry, I couldn't use this. I could never cut anybody. What's that telling us about him? What trait does he have when he's like, I could not cut someone with a piece of glass? Not scared. What? Sympathetic. He's compassionate. Okay. Respectable. He's just not violent. Okay. I like compassionate. That means he cares about people. He wouldn't want to hurt anybody. Okay. Cherry tells Ponyboy, we couldn't let our parents see us with you. What's that showing us? She's being what?
Honest.
Straight up honest. And then, I can't take much more, I'll kill myself. When Johnny says that. Depressed. He just can't seem to see anything good going on in life. Alright, Chris, instead of spraying, would you go around and get the books for me? I'll disinfect books, y'all. If you'll come up and get a towel, I'll disinfect them. Y'all just wipe your desk, and as soon as you wipe, you can go. So wipe and go. We'll do a quick review tomorrow before the test, okay? Study your questions. Y'all study your questions tonight. Wipe your desk and then you may go. Chris, look at the books. Unless you bring them up here, that's fine. Towels. Come on, y'all. Come get a towel. Wipe and go. Wipe and go.
Yeah, put on God.
Hey, Periana, they're going to make you wait. Somebody's going to be in the door. They're going to make you wait till it's